Hey everybody, I wanted to start out by telling you that there are two different types of silicones, platinum based and tin based. The platinum ones are more expensive, the tin based is generally cheaper. Here's a variety of molds. The clear one in the front is platinum based. These have serious mixing ratios, so you might want to have a scale and a calculator. These are good things to have around the shop. Matte finish, clear lacquer, free coat, which is a release, and powdered release, which is spray-on 307. This is a two-part mold with a pin going up the center, platinum based. The pin has impressions on it, depressions, so that it fits in the same way every time. This is a two-part mold of a handle. This is an open-faced mold for doing straight detail. This is a rigid mold made out of a hard material that cures, is almost stone-like. This has to be released every time you pour it. The groove along the side is so you can hot glue and seal the seam. It's poured from the top. This is a half poured clay. You do the clay and then you pour the top half, then you flip it over. You can see the feeds and vents. This is what it looked like with half of it poured. I used primer to basically coat the mold so that I could pour the second half and not have the silicone stick to itself. Acts as a barrier. And this is how the part came out, the master. Sometimes I use Scotch Magic transparent tape as a barrier. It's good to make a shut-off between the silicone pour so you can cut to it and not have to be too critical with your cut. This pin goes through, and I wanted a pivot point on it, and it also helps locate the mold. Sometimes you want to put pins in afterwards, and you can drill through silicone, but you need to use a drill that's twice the size of the hole you want. These are awls that I had a friend of mine make. It's just brass that's sharpened, and you poke through it, and then you end up with that little thing. This is a mold that we put together to rotate. I put wheels on the end of it, and we poured resin into it and just rotated it with our foot and rolled it around the shop until it cured. This is a way of doing vents. I call it the volcano method. Basically, you just cut it in the shape of a volcano. And here's Sam with the Grissom that we prototyped. We started out by doing a vacuum form of the parts. Here's the vacuum form. That's so we could have a shell part that we can, a fairly thick shell that we can make a mold from. We put holes in the top of the plate here so that the silicone would actually contact itself on the other side. These are pressure pots. We have several around the shop. Pressure pots are good for removing air bubbles that might be trapped in the mold. This is a larger one. This is a smaller one that you'll see later in the video. This one's available for about $100. You can buy it at most tool shops. This is a large one. We call it the bomb. It takes a long time to put together, but it has an 18-inch throat. This is a pretty standard one. This one costs about $300. Here's a vacuum pump. It cost me about $100. Here's a large-scale vacuum pump. Costs about $400, and then we built the table around it. This is about suspending parts. How do you put the parts in a mold? There are various ways to hold a part up while the silicone pours around it. Usually you build a box around it and then you support it. This one has a dummy shape in it so that it will, you can remove that part later. This was poured vertically, and this is what the mold looked like after we shot it. And here's the part that came out of it. The holes are still there. Basically, the silicone touches itself so it doesn't collapse. I like to take a picture of molds when I know how much resin I'm going to use. It's a good idea to know exactly how much resin that you need to mix to pour into your molds. Another way of suspending a mold. The mold doesn't always have to be poured the way it's going to be used. You can actually put the part upside down so that your resin flows over the top, and then flip the mold over to pour it when it's done, to pour resin into it. This is a specialty finish section. I like brushing in a gold leaf into various molds. Sometimes I like to spray primer a mold to make a barrier. Talcum powder also works good. This can lengthen the life of your mold. Here's some more gold flake powder. The less the resin touches the mold, the longer the mold will last. So any kind of barrier you can put in there will help out the length of the mold. I'm really getting into steampunk parts in case you haven't noticed. I like the wings, they came out pretty good. I like to stack as many parts as close to, as possible on those gang molds. This is Freecoat. It's my favorite release, Freecoat 1711. Ask for it by name. It's very handy. It's good for extending the life of your mold, and it's good for making just a nice barrier on parts before you pour a mold sometimes. I'm getting into clear resins. Clear resins have to be used with platinum molds. The problem with clear is they take a long time to cure, sometimes 3 or 4 hours. These are parts that we did for Sam's shuttle. Basically, it has a hard shell, and then the master was put into it so that it would be suspended inside that shell, and then we poured the silicone around it. This is our standard process for doing a part. We'll machine out, for a large part, we'll machine a master for vacuum forming, then we'll vacuum form it and cut it out, and then we have the shell thickness that we want the part to be finally. These are some of the prototypes for the shuttle. Some of the engine cones that we did this actually as an SLA. Did the geometry and then put it through the SLA machine. This is the large body, the neck of the shuttle. And for this we did it almost the same way. We suspended it above a hard shell. I think I wrapped it in bubble wrap to get the thickness. And then we suspended it in the hard shell that we made off the bubble wrap. You see the suspensions there. I put fiberglass as a barrier and go around it, and then filled it with silicone. This is what the final mold looks like when we shoot it. All those little vents sticking out of it are so that bubbles can escape out the highest points. These are parts of the nacelles that we're working on for the Dauntless. We machined them out of a foam and then cleaned them up, made the masters and made molds, and they came out really good. This whole part will be made clear so you can light it up. And I want to thank you for